One question that I think about a lot is the question of enoughness. What is enough for you to live your life in the way that you want to live your life?
Welcome to The Endgame by Clear Estate, life's final chapter, discussed openly. I'm Davide. In these conversations, we get real about estates, legacies, our efforts to disrupt old systems with new technology. My co-host and our in-house estate expert, we always have a really cool name for her. Sarah's amazing, love her, but she's on holiday. So today we're speaking with a very unique style of philanthropist, Claire Trottier, a scientist turned activist investor and bookstore owner whose work touches everything from science and education to climate, health, refugee support, and taxation. Claire is, and she's not shy about saying it, she's from a very wealthy family. She thinks a lot about her responsibility as an heir to a wealthy family. She wants to have an impact on the world. And she thinks about how can some of her peers, wealthy peers, can do their fair share and think through. I mean, this is not about fundamentally changing the system, but about tweaking the system in a way that is fairer, and where a fair contribution is done, both for climate, for poverty, for a bunch of issues. And so really appreciate the fact that she came on the show, and super genuine, correct? Very open, very, very, very lucid about who she is and also how she's thinking about these issues. And it's really interesting to me, actually, to see that a person that is, call it, on the receiving end of wealth, also think through their legacy and think through how they're going to have impact on the world, and how that impact and that legacy, how it's also shaping their own children's lives, and how to think about this from a holistic standpoint, from a generational standpoint. So really interesting and really a very enlightening conversation. So philanthropist, activist, Claire Trottier, hopefully you enjoyed as much as I did. Please don't forget to subscribe to The Endgame by Clear Estate on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Claire, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll talk more about Patriotic Millionaires soon, but just to start, how did you decide to start encouraging your peers, I don't know if we should call them peers, but wealthier Canadians to think harder about giving away their money? And they don't have to be Canadians, I guess, but in the particular context, Canadians, to give away more of their money, I would say.
I don't know when I started thinking about it in that framing. I mean, I think that I started getting involved in philanthropy probably around 2012, something around then. Um, I grew up in a family where, my parents really believe in, having a responsibility towards society, having, benefited from the system, and my father having been very successful in his business and wanting to contribute back to society in a significant way. Like, part of his own story is, the only reason he was able to attend university was because he obtained a scholarship that had been donated, basically. And so that, for him, he felt like he really benefited from the generosity of others and from, a system that allowed him to have a success. And so I think that for me, it was always part of how I grew up, this idea that, if you have a lot of success, you need to share that success. And that, nobody needs this amount of money for themselves, that, there are so many pressing needs in society. And when you can make a contribution, you should make a contribution. So, I started getting involved around 2012, and it was already kind of within that context of those family values. And I think that as a family, we, have been doing work to try to encourage other folks to get involved in philanthropy in various ways through the years. So I think that there's not like a specific, moment or event or anything like that motivated me. I think it really comes from those values that my parents taught me.
Interesting, because on the podcast we talk a lot about legacy, and we talk about how people think about legacy, and talk about values, and we talk about. I mean, we do. I mean, Clear Estate is an estate planning and estate administration business, so death is part of what we talk about.
Mm,
But you talked about values, so I'm assuming something that your parents wanted to pass on as part of those values.
of course.
How was that done, like on a daily basis? Is it part of like, the water, or is it a mantra you guys repeated every morning?
I don't know. It's interesting. I'm a parent now, so it's questions that I ask myself about my own kids. And they're growing up in a different context than the one that I grew up in. It's a different time, it's a different era. And I think first of all, my parents started talking to us about their success in, kind of slowly over time, getting us more involved in like discussing decisions about their philanthropy. It was always like as a part of our responsibility, having had this success to contribute. So for me, it was just like never really a question. And I think that maybe there was some conversation about like, um, we want to feel like we've had like a tangible impact, and doing what we can to have that impact now during our lifetimes is something that's really important. And, we don't want to just sit back and like take fancy vacations. And I don't know, like my parents aren't very flashy with their money. My mom would never like purchase a Chanel bag like over her dead body. Would she do that? You know what I mean? It's just not in their style. So I think having some conversations about those values and the way that the family approaches its, you know, success. Yeah.
I'm not hearing the word obligation coming
Mm.
in your vocabulary. It's more about desire for impact. So how do you think about kind of like, is this a duty? I mean, is this, guilt and giving back, or is this a true desire to leverage resources and a platform to kind of magnify impact on the world,
Um,
or a bit of both?
yeah, I don't think, well, for me, there's not really guilt. I think that, I went through a bit of a process myself in terms of kind of a grappling with the reality of this like winning lottery ticket of life that I've been handed, which I think that, it's like not a conversation everybody has or that everybody can relate to. But I think people who are wealthy do sometimes have feelings of guilt about that. And so it's important to be able to kind of work through that yourself and to make sure you have clarity in terms of how you're making decisions about how to spend money. And like, you're talking about like estate planning and all of these different things. I think it's really, really important to really grapple with um, those perhaps like difficult feelings and work through them, um, so that you're not making decisions based on guilt or shame or anything like that. That it's really like, well, these are the cards that I've been handed, and it's a really amazing set of cards. How do I play the cards that I've been handed in life? That's it for me. It's not about like making myself feel bad about my situation and making other wealthy people feel bad, or like I'm not, there's no witch hunt here or anything like that. It's really just like, well, these are the cards we've been handed. What are you going to do with those cards? Are you going to, do something that's a net positive in society with those cards? Or are you going to sort of just sit back and feel bad about it and just live a very nice life for yourself? Like you can actually go out and like do something very significant. And I think also that, when you are wealthy, depending on what the source of your wealth is, you may or may not have expertise in like managing assets and all of these different questions. And um, so a lot of folks are really dependent on their advisors to guide them. And the way that the systems are structured is that like advisors have sort of, there's like a sort of like a status quo of like, well, this is like the list of things that one must do when one has this amount of money. Like this is the way it is. and do not question it. The reality is that there isn't just one way. There are many, many ways. And I think that advisors do their clients a disservice if they present, um, a menu of options that is extremely restrictive when a lot of people are having these complex thoughts about their place in society, their legacy, what is their contribution, all of these things. And it doesn't have to be maximizing every single penny until when, I think one question that I think about a lot is the question of enoughness, you know, what is enough for you to live your life in the way that you want to live your life, to ensure that your kids have what they need, to make sure that, the next generations have what they need. What is that actually really concretely? Like when you actually like put pen to paper or like numbers to Excel. Okay. And anything beyond that, you can use to have an impact in the way that resonates with you. Um, so I really think that that is a way to think about things that should be offered to wealthy people to really think through that. Like you don't need to accumulate for yourself everything. Everyone's needs are going to be different. Not everyone's needs are going to be the same, and that's okay. But actually, like think about it,
I mean, we talked about legacy. Your family's foundation is part of that legacy, and you're talking about impact. So first of all, how do you define impact, and
Mm,
where do you want to have through that vehicle? Where do you choose to have the most impact? Where do you think that you can contribute the most, given your family's background, your own background, your work, your
yeah.
interests, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've thought about our philanthropy and our strategies differently over like the course of many, many years. I think that the place that we're at right now is really thinking about systemic change. For the Family Foundation, I would say like our biggest concern is a climate crisis. And the fact that we are in a period of massive electrotech revolution that's happening around the world right now, where you see India and Pakistan and China and many African nations electrifying at a pace that is completely unpredicted. Like even the most I would say like optimistic predictions about how this transition was going to work miss the mark. It really is happening remarkably fast around the world, but not so much here in Canada. And we see that as a very clear risk in Canada. And so funding work around climate change and making sure that as a country, we are going to be able to meet the moment and make sure our economy is one that's built for the 21st century. And that is going to be able to survive this massive revolution that's happening around the world. So that for us, like we really think about systems and at multiple different levels. Like, the foundation's been around for many years. We have an amazing staff. Not everyone's going to have that level of kind of resources and scenario analysis that we've developed internally, and that's okay. And actually, like we're part of a group of foundations and other philanthropists that are very concerned about climate change, and so we set up this platform with our partners at the Clean Economy Fund, where we've done like really detailed due diligence about these projects. So for folks who are interested in funding in that area but might not have that internal capacity to do their own due diligence, we have like sort of a platform of things that other folks can fund. So it's like, yeah, we think systemically, and then we look for ways to provide on-ramps for others to join us in this type of approach to funding.
And where do you choose to spend your time?
I wear many hats. I have lots of jobs. So yeah, I'm on the board of the Trottier Family Foundation. I'm on the board of our family office as well. So kind of oversight over our investment strategy. I'm the chair of the board of my own foundation called Euphrazine that works in the area of democracy and human rights. So there's a lot of work being done there. I own a bookstore, cafe, bar, and yeah, lots of other different engagements. But I would say that those are probably the pieces that take up the most of my time. So I divide my time around my different priorities, and of course I do a lot of work around advocating for wealth taxes and trying to find ways to address growing wealth inequality. So that's also something that I spend quite a bit of time on as well.
A lot of the people that listen to this podcast are actually wealth advisors, and so you spend time with your family office, and obviously you care a lot about impact. How do you reconcile? How do you think about impact investing in general,
Mm,
and reconciling kind of like ROI type pressures on and I would put people in two buckets: the people that have the Excel spreadsheet and their number is secured versus the people that their number is not secured and they're still chasing that number in order
mm.
to ensure their future. So how do you think about generally impact investing, and more particularly how to live your values through your investments?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about impact investing, everybody has a different definition of what that
Hmm.
actually means. And so I have a hard time with that term because of that. Some people will have very wildly different definitions. And so I think to put it really concretely, like for us, we are interested in financial return and we are interested in uh, sustainable and societal return as well. We're not compromising on the financial return in our investment decisions. Um, so part of the approach is, there's like the very basic, easy kind of negative screening that you can do to remove investments on like more harmful um, industries. But then it becomes more about, okay, well, what is the value add of what we're investing in? Are we investing in a way that is actually aligned with our vision of where we think the economy is going? So, for us, it's very clear that the global economy is going to be shifting to one where energy is based on renewable electrons and not on an extremely volatile, complicated to distribute fossil fuel industry. And that is what is happening right now around the world. And so for us, that we're all Canadian. We skate where the puck is going. We skate where the puck is going. That's where the puck is going. That's where there's money to be made. That's where you're dealing with way less volatility. I mean, anybody who, look at the price of gas right now and what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. Like, do you really want your entire economy to be impacted in such dramatic ways by geopolitical tensions, et cetera? No, we need to have energy security and energy sovereignty. And so that's the lens through which we do our make our investment decisions. And so, yes, it has an impact in a way that we think is positive in terms of the climate, and it has an impact in terms of our return. And it's you know, my father likes to say, he's in the technology business, and his company is celebrating 50 years this year. And his company has reinvented itself time and time and time again as technologies have changed. When a new technology comes on the market, if you're not competing against it and you're not innovating, you're dead in the water. And for the first time ever, fossil fuels have a direct competitor that's cheaper, more efficient, more secure, more stable, less volatile. We need to be taking that into account. So for us, it's like, yes, it's good for climate. It has social and environmental returns, but it's also where the puck is going from an economic standpoint, from a return on investment standpoint. So investing with that lens is very important to us.
How are you guys thinking about, I would say, the zeitgeist right now in North America when it comes to energy policy?
Yeah, I think that North America, it's fascinating. I think North America right now is doubling down on dinosaur technology that is on its way out, and it's just a matter of time. So I really think it's like when it was the horse and buggy era and cars came in, the cars won. The cars eventually won. People who invested in the car industry and planned for the car industry and were like, oh, we're going to need a way to distribute gas for these vehicles, those people prospered. And if you were doubling down on horse and buggy, you were in trouble. Right now, we're doubling down on horse and buggy. And so I feel deeply troubled about it. We don't think that it's an economically smart way to go about doing things. We think we need to have like a planned transition and be smart about it. It's not going to happen from one day to the next. It's going to be externally disruptive, but it's going to happen whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, it's happening, and we can either be left behind in the dust, and or we can join Europe and a lot of our Asian allies, and actually engage in the economy of the 21st century.
I don't know how old your kids are, but my two daughters are 16 and 13, and clearly there's a shift to how teenagers today talk about. I mean, I remember when I was younger, a while back,
It's okay. We're
it
probably
was
around the same age, so
it was the Iraq War, and it was there was a bunch of things, and it was really about recycling, correct? It was about
Mhm.
pollution and recycling, but now there's a bit of a sense of doom coming out of
Mhm.
that
Oh yeah,
generation,
of course.
and real anxiety.
Because that's based in reality, that's based in facts, right? Like I think that that is actually like an accurate view of, unfortunately, the reality that our kids are growing up in. Like I grew up at a time, like I was 9 years old when the Berlin Wall came down, you know?
Me too,
And so
something like that. Yeah.
so it's like it's a very different experience. I think like my
Yes.
kids are around the same age as your kids. It's a very different experience for them, and I think that it's reasonable to be anxious and to have some doom and gloom because there's a lot of very scary things that are happening. Um, and it's not immaterial. I think sometimes we have a tendency to forget. I think it was 2 years ago there was those massive fires in Los Angeles that destroyed entire neighborhoods. It's like a climate related disaster. um, and the example I always like to give is the Getty Museum in LA. The Getty Museum is a museum that has like an incredible art collection, and they knew that a devastating fire was a very, very high risk for them. It was like, it's going to happen. It's a matter of when. And so let's plan for it to make sure we protect our priceless art collection. What do we do when a massive climate related fire disaster occurs? And they put in very clear plans in place to respond to that. And they did not burn down. They were surrounded by fire because they put that plan in place because they knew it was going to happen.
They stored water or something like that.
They
It
did
was
all
it's
kinds of stuff. I mean, they had
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like brush management. They had a whole water plan. Anyway, it's incredible actually what they did. But the piece that I think is the take home message for me is that like you can plan for things. Don't stick your head in the sand. Like understand the reality of the threats we're dealing with and actually plan accordingly. And if you plan accordingly, like you're gonna be okay, or you have more chance of being okay. It's not, a full guarantee. But if you don't, then you burn down. So I think kids know that. Kids know that like they see what's happening, we need to respond. We need to actually prepare and not pretend like it's business as usual.
Changing gears a little bit. So you have experience in this space, whether it's philanthropy or embracing various causes. If I'm somebody thinking about, first generation kind of like wealth builder, and I'm starting to think about how can I have an impact? Like how can I hate to say give away my wealth, but try to do something different in terms of
Hmm.
value creation in the world than what I've been doing up until now. Where do I start? Like what are the tools? How do I think about it? Who do I talk to apart from
Yeah.
writing checks left and right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the best way to do it is honestly to be in community with others who've done it before, who can help support you, because it can be very, very overwhelming. People don't know where to start. People don't know how to think about it. People are scared of making mistakes. They don't want to waste their money. They're being pulled in multiple different directions. They're getting pitched for all kinds of things. Like, how do I manage all of this, right? And so I think that it's helpful to be in community to do that. And there's lots of different groups that can provide support. One that I'm part of that I find really extraordinary is called Forward Global, which is like an international group of wealth holders and philanthropists. And they have really excellent like programming that kind of takes you through steps of like how to think through your own giving to really identify like what you're interested in, what kind of impact you want to have, how is it meaningful to you, what does it mean tangibly in terms of like your financial resources, your time, like all of these different factors that need to be taken into consideration when you start thinking about engaging more actively in philanthropy in like a thoughtful way. I find that their approach to things and the way that they support especially new people who are new to this, even people like I joined a couple years ago and I've been doing this for a long time and I also find it very helpful. So I don't think it's just for like people who are new. There are other groups who do it. I mean, For Global is not the only one, but I really, really appreciate the approach that they take. They have a very amazing group in Canada, actually. It's a very, very vibrant, active group in Canada. And we have like regular online meetups. They're in-person meetups, mostly in Toronto. I'm in Montreal, so I don't really join those. But I think that, yeah, being in community and learning from those who've already done it, not reinventing the wheel.
We learn from mistakes, correct? So
Mhm.
what are the typical mistakes that people make, whether they're experienced or not?
I would say the typical mistake that people make maybe is not realizing how much is being done and where there is expertise. And so jumping into something and spending a lot of time and energy kind of recreating something that's already there, that if you had actually like supported something that's already there, your dollar would have gone so much further and you would have saved so much time and energy. So I think that's why if you are connected to folks who are in that space, you can learn about what's being done, whether your interest is in like climate like me or mental health or whatever the case may be. There are others who are doing extraordinary work and like find out who's doing extraordinary work and learn from them and talk to a variety of people, you know? Don't listen to just like the one advisor. And that's why a group like For Global is great because then you're in a community with like hundreds of people who all have different experience. And so you can hear different perspectives and hear, stories about people's failures, people's learnings, and piggyback on that.
When we talk about estate planning and we talk about legacy, um, the question I have for you is pros and cons of control beyond the grave, if you see what I mean. So, so, and I like, and you want some kind of, shaping of the future, even when you're gone, obviously, if you're deciding to put your mind to it and have some kind of an impact. But the question we have at Clear Estate and a lot of experiences that we have is that like at some point it's too much, and that kind of like you're gone anyway. So what do you care? So what are your thoughts on that, and how are you thinking about it in terms of your own kids? And obviously the structure is a little bit different. There's a
Yeah.
foundation. Obviously there's a board and there's a charter and you're not free to do whatever you want, but maybe you are. I don't know. So I'm asking the question. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my view on this is that it's best to share power and control with others and not to control it all yourself. Nobody is all knowing, nobody is able to predict every eventuality. Um, I think that it is very important to engage in trust-based philanthropy and find partners that are doing work that you believe in and letting them actually do the work. A lot of wealthy people, you may have made your money from a specific business. Um, you know a lot about that business. If some random person from outside was like, okay, you should spend your money like this in your business, you'd be like, no, get away from me, right? So I think that if you're interested, like, I'm interested in climate, obviously, but I'm not an expert. Like, I don't know. Like, I know some things, but I'm not the expert. So I think that, like, for me, it's important to understand like where expertise lies and let go of some of that desire for control. And you will go much further when you work with trusted partners who have expertise. So I think ceding some power and control is really, really important. Um, and things change so rapidly. Like the priorities of today may not be the priorities of tomorrow. They won't be the priorities of tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like they just won't. Um, it's very difficult to predict. We're also going to be in a big AI question mark. Like, what is that going to do? We don't know. There's lots and lots of very, very smart people who disagree on what is going to happen with the implementation of AI. So if all these smart people, you have like Yoshua Bengio, one of the godfathers of AI, and Jan LeCun, another godfather of AI, who have fundamental disagreements about it, both very, very, very intelligent people. So like, I don't know. What do I know? But I know that it's uncertain. And so I think you have to accept that there's uncertainty, and kind of let go of that idea of control, definitely beyond the grave. And all the more reason to give away things in your lifetime. Like, don't you want to see the impact of what you can do and be there to see it? So yeah, if you're really concerned about um, being involved in decisions, like do it now while you're still alive.
So you're the chair of Patriotic Millionaires Canada.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Patriotic Millionaires Canada is an organization of wealthy people who advocate for wealth taxes and other forms of progressive taxation to address wealth inequality. It comes out of a global movement, really. There's a huge group that was founded. Originally, Patriotic Millionaires was founded in the U.S. during the first Obama administration, so it's been around for quite a while. There's a very active and successful branch in the UK. There are similar groups all over Europe, in France and Germany, in the Netherlands. Um, and so there's basically a big movement of folks who are like, okay, the situation in terms of wealth inequality that we have this year, 2026, is very, very different than what we had 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. Wealth inequality has always existed, but the extremes of it are actually unprecedented. We are past the level of inequality that existed during the Gilded Age. I was at an event a couple weeks ago with the Nobel laureate for economics, Darren Osimoglu, who was saying that the wealth that the Magnificent Seven companies hold is twice as much as the amount of money the entire British Empire had at the height of its power. So that's the level that we're talking about. And this inequality that we're experiencing is happening against the backdrop of massive global instability. Um, Obviously, like here in Canada, we have a housing crisis, we have a cost of living crisis for a lot of people. People are very worried, people are very angry, understandably. Um, we don't think that this is sustainable. The system as it exists today, which results in, this level of inequality, and it's only getting more amplified, right? We have a K curve, economy where we're really like the benefits are going to a small number of people while most other people struggle. That is not sustainable. That we're going to reach a breaking point at some point. And the rules that we have, the tax system that we have, that's what it's doing. That's what it's doing. Um, can we think of other ways to do it that, you know, we're not saying like get rid of all rich people, like we're rich people. Okay. It's just like you cannot have a situation where a small number of people's wealth grows, doubles in some cases yearly, um, for some individuals, um, while everybody else is really struggling. So, a small tax, wealth tax, like what Gabriel Zekman's been proposing in France, which is 2% on wealth over $100 million, to me is a very reasonable proposal. If you think about it, if you tax wealth above $100 million at 2%, your assets are going to keep growing more than that. If you're smart about your investments, you're making more than 2% return. So your wealth will still continue to grow. It's just going to grow a little slower, and it provides resources to tackle some of these massive challenges that are impacting society. And it signals as well that like we understand there's a problem. We understand there's a problem, and we want to be part of the solution, because I don't want Canada to end up in a situation where we have like some people worth $800 million, $1 billion, not million, $1 billion, like, Elon Musk is a trillionaire. It's not healthy for our democracy. It's not healthy for our society. Um, and so yeah, I think the message is like, we can afford to contribute, and we don't need to be heading in that direction of just like extraordinary wealth at the very, very top while everyone else struggles.
Interesting. How do you think about taxes versus charity or philanthropy? Like you have both levers, correct? You could pay taxes or give away the money directly. So how do you draw that conceptual distinction?
I mean, we do both. I
No, I
yeah,
get it.
but I think if you
Some
think,
people would say, I just want to do one rather than the
well, I
other.
think if that were the case, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today.
Hmm.
That's where we're at right now. That's the status quo. The status quo is people who decide to give away their money decide to give away their money. Some people are deciding to give away their money, some people aren't. And this is the society that we have. The society we have is exactly that. That is the status quo. So, you know,
It's a forcing mechanism.
it's a mechanism to ensure that everybody contributes, you know.
Hmm.
My family is contributing in a voluntary and I think like pretty extraordinary way. You know, my father has committed to giving away half of his wealth in his lifetime, and he's actually following through on that. Um, if everybody else was doing it, I would be so happy. Do it. I mean, I would call the bluff of anybody who says that that's a better way of doing things because I would be like, well, if it's a better way of doing things like TikTok, like time's running out, like where is everybody? And so it's not happening. So, you know, if it's not happening, we need to have other mechanisms that impact everybody and not just those who actually feel like a sense of responsibility and a desire to give back, you know? And the tax system was not always as it is. You know, the tax system was very, very different before 1980. I'm not suggesting we go back to that, but you know, the maximum like uh, bracket for like income tax was like 80%, 90%. I can't remember the exact number, but it like pretty high, like bananas. Okay. I'm not saying go back to that, but like we've had other systems. And the way that the system is structured now is leading to the present situation. So if we agree that like the present situation is not ideal and we should do better, then like I'm open to other suggestions. I'm open to other ideas. But it has to involve everybody who has the means contributing, you know?
I'm not challenging the idea. I'm saying,
Yeah.
how do you think about it?
Yeah.
Taxation versus
Yeah.
charity.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Um,
for me, taxation it's necessary. It's essential. You know, there's lots of other things. It's not the only thing. There's lots of other things that could be done. Obviously, looking at um, like evasion, like different tax evasion, like closing different loopholes. There's like lots of different things that could be done. So, you know, I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to like nerd out on all the details. I know lots of economists who love to nerd out on all the details. I generally rely on their expertise, you know. Um, but to me, some kind of tax reform is necessary at this point.
it's interesting because there was, I mean, not so without getting into the internal Quebec politics, there was a proposal by one of the parties for essentially a minor wealth tax here in Quebec, and one of your peers, a millionaire peer, was called out and then intervened in the media. And his two, and again, I'm just relating
Yep.
messages, and I'm interested in the debate. But his message was, well, I already pay my taxes, and I think they're being spent inefficiently, and therefore wouldn't want to put more money in an efficient system. That's argument number one. Again, just arguments. And second was my money is at work, correct? Like in terms of value creation, in terms of investment, and in terms of risk taking. And therefore, this is how I create value for society. And again, I'm asking for your perspective from somebody who has their hands on all the levers, correct? Like, so the
Mhm.
lever of taxation, the lever of charity, the lever of a family office where you guys, do invest in value creation projects that have positive impact, or at least you're seeking positive impact beyond financial returns, although you require financial returns. So when you do have all of these levers, how do you think about those kinds of arguments, and how do you triage in terms of decision making where, because you have the choice, and so where, I mean, taxes is arguable, but you have the choice to actually argue for more taxes. So how do you think about all these levers in terms of the ROI on each dollar spent, or each dollar that goes out along those different channels?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that like again, the status quo is the status quo, you know? all of us who have access to wealth are making our wealth work in the ways that we're making it work right now. And this is the system. This is the reality of how things are playing out in reality, which is like a massive housing crisis, an affordability crisis for a lot of folks, record number of people going to food banks. Like this is the reality of the way it works currently. And so I think we can tell ourselves nice stories about how we make our money work in this economy, but the reality is the reality. And so we have to think differently. We have to think differently. If you're okay with the status quo and you think the status quo is great, well, you're what I'm on that tiny sliver of people who's doing okay, and good for you. It's amazing. But if you're comfortable with lots of other people suffering, then that's on you. But if you think, what, this system is not working, or our health system is crumbling, we have all these problems, like something needs to be done, then well, yeah, something needs to be done. So in terms of ROI, like I am not satisfied with my ROI right now. My ROI is societal. That's what I'm looking at, really. Financially, I'm doing great, fantastic, but I'm not going to be happy in a bunker, isolated from society. I want, my kids to grow up in a world where like their classmates are not like, struggling. If we want a thriving economy, people need to have disposable income, and that only works if we have a better distribution of financial prosperity. So, I'm again like open to suggestions. I think that for me is fundamentally it. Like the situation we have now, where people who are wealthy are investing, etc. That's great for them, but where are the actual like this idea of like trickle down economics? Like this is it, you guys. Like if trickle economics worked as promised, we would not be in the situation that we are in right now if it worked. So it doesn't. It doesn't actually work. So what else could work? What are some of the changes that we could be making so that the economy works for more people and that there's more prosperity?
I'm going to ask maybe something that might sound a little controversial, but part of me, and again, I have no particular personal, I'm not in a position to actually ask myself that question. But part of me thinks, is this self-preservation from a class standpoint, if you
Mm.
see what I mean? Like, is this 1787 kind of like Paris, and like you're sitting there and you're feeling the mob kind of rising, and then you're thinking, let's do something, throw throw. I wouldn't say throw
I
cakes at
mean,
the
listen,
mob,
I
but
that's
but
not the
but my
way
point is this part of it?
I mean, that's not the way that I think, although Patriotic Millionaires a few years ago did have like a sort of tongue-in-cheek little open letter that I signed that was like the pitchforks are coming. Like, can we maybe take action before they come for us? So I think that there is a bit of a winking kind of to that. That's not what's motivating me, but I do think that that's possibly where we're heading if things don't change. You know what I mean? Like, I really feel like we are in this period of like intense democratic backsliding and geopolitical uncertainty. We see what's happening in the US, which is terrifying, really. It's a tinderbox. Like it could go very badly. It could go very badly. One of the things that I have access to is foresight scenario planning of like what are different outcomes for democracy, for climate, for all of these different things based on trends and patterns that are happening right now, and a lot of them are extraordinarily dire. So we need to do something to pull ourselves out of from that potential brink. Let's do it now before we reach the full brink, please. Thanks. You know what I mean? Like, um, but things could go very, very badly on like many different fronts. And so the status quo is not acceptable. The status quo must change. That's my message.
Claire, to finish on a positive note, how are you thinking about your own legacy, and how do you want to leave? I mean, you're not close to leaving this world, but
Yeah.
my point is, how are you thinking about your impact and your own legacy, and you have children, so how do you think about it?
I mean, I definitely think about it a lot. In 2022, I had breast cancer, and I went through, surgery, chemo, radiation, and all of that, very not fun stuff, and definitely confronted my own mortality in a very, very tangible way. And for me, coming out of that experience, like I'm more than ever dedicated to the work that I'm engaged in. Um, you only live once. You have to make the most of it. Um, and I want to know that I have done everything in my power to leave a better world for my kids than the path that we are currently on. So I really, really, really feel that. Like I want to be able to say, like, I did everything that I could. I was not complacent. I saw that there were all of these overlapping crises that are happening. I'm in a position to do something about it. you know? It's like people say like, well, somebody should do something about this and somebody should do something about that. I'm somebody. I can't remember whose quote that is, okay? But like I am somebody. I can't resolve everything on my own, even though I have more resources than most. Like I am still just one person, but I want to know that I gave it my all.
Claire, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
ThinkBait. TNKR Media. Good talk.